Week 7. I really found this week's readings to be absolutely fascinating, especially in context with the topics of terrorism and how the various issues all connect. So this evening, I'd like to chat with y'all about the question of how we handle nation-state versus actors versus transnational actors. The readings this week suggest that the ultimate goal of collection ultimate goal is to amass enough collected information to give policymakers a thorough understanding of both the capabilities and intentions of the one in question so that they can plan and act accordingly. So with that in mind, we ask the question, which one is easier to collect from, state or non-state? So first we'll look at states. States at first glance should be the easiest to deal with. When it comes to assessing capabilities, we know that military capabilities will ultimately self-reveal, as troops and tactics are difficult to conceal. Research and development of new weapons must be tested eventually, and if you're North Korea, it's important to put out a press release and let us all know about the results. Data of this kind is typically collected via technical collection disciplines and requires very little on-the-ground presence. Intentions, however, are another ball of wax. Judging a nation's intention to employ their capabilities requires a study of intangibles, such as the solidity of the state, the support of the general population for the government, and the ideals of the leadership. Any and all of these things, as we saw with the Arab Spring, can change dramatically and very quickly. Additionally, Lowenthal reminds us that the states about which the United States is most concerned tend to be secretive or engage in political processes that are not transparent, such as China, Russia, North Korea, Cuba, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Iran are the examples that Lowenthal gives. On the collection end, there are the challenges of acquiring information via human intelligence, which while arguably the most valuable for assessing intentions, the nations we would wish to have accurate assessments of intentions are notoriously closed. So additionally, analysis of state actors may be more susceptible to mirror imaging and assuming linearly that the status quo of a state will continue indefinitely. Lowenthal concludes that spotting discontinuities without constantly crying wolf remains very difficult. And as if that weren't enough of a challenge, yet another major issue arises with the question of dealing with failed states. The Arab Spring upheavals definitely shook up the Middle Eastern region and created a number of situations where a failed state could, and in some states did, emerge. Syria, of course, is the obvious failed state example that comes to my mind. And Lowenthal says that failed states pose 3 issues to U.S. policymakers: the effects of that failure on the state's population, the effects of that failure on the state's neighbors, and the effects of that failure kind of in magnitude of making it become a magnet for those who wish to live outside the law. So the power vacuum creates an ideal situation for traffickers or terrorists, people who don't want a lot of oversight in their activities. So the big issues with failed states for intelligence are in identifying the potential for failure and in identifying transnational issues which may be fostered more easily in a failed state. Then there are the non-state actors. Since all transnational issues have major centers of activity in nation-states, it might be assumed that one could apply the same intelligence methods and achieve similar results. However, the interconnectivity of issues related to the same actors creates a more complicated web to keep track of, and one that our policymakers have a difficulty in placing priorities on. So issues such as cybersecurity, the broad generic brand of terrorism, nuclear proliferation from state to non-state actors, trafficking is an interstate activity, and economic sabotage. All of those can tie back to non-state actors. And additionally, transnational actors have a more flexible infrastructure, which makes the group very difficult to keep track of and to predict. Even though we know their intentions, we won't always know their capabilities. Non-state actors are, by definition, not limited to a particular geographic region. So we have a very difficult time keeping track of them. In both state and non-state collection, however, technical surveillance has been a common factor, something that Lowenthal points out as a commonality. So while human intelligence is more difficult to insert, our intelligence capabilities allow for flexibility and development. And I think it's highly instructive, though, that Lowenthal emphasizes the following points. First, that the intelligence community is still relatively young and gaining lots of experience as we speak. And second, that the intelligence community has changed dramatically since 2001 and is still settling into its new shoes and getting used to the new structure and new priorities management. So I think as the intelligence community continues to develop both technologically and in experience, I think we're likely to see growth in new approaches to the same old issues. So those are my thoughts on this week's topic, and I look forward to seeing yours. Thanks so much.